Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening than scheduled because, quite frankly, I am losing my mind. And for some reason, I was mentally 15 minutes ahead of everyone else. However, you join me and the amazing Angie Setzer for the grain market blast. It is the first day of the week, but the last day of the month, the last day of the quarter, the last day of the half. Where is the year gone? I don't know. But anyway, Angie, with a capital G, will be giving us a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I'll get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on this Spaces session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed the glamorous Angie Setzer. And yes, before she says it, because she's already WhatsApped it to me, yes, I did have a premature Spaces moment.
It happens to a lot of guys. It's okay. I promise.
Oh, no.
He's like,
Oh,
can
no.
you see this? And I'm like, can I see what? Like, aren't we starting
That's
in
also
15
happened
minutes?
before.
That is true. Yeah, that's
Oh,
what, I mean, I'm
no.
looking. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. So,
Welcome to the smutty grey market.
right? That's what, hey, it's a real thing you have to worry about in wheat for real. So I actually had a grower win, the award for the smuttiest wheat sample sent into an elevator once. So, or into a wheat
Oh,
mill
hello.
before. So yeah, you learn something new every day.
There you go.
So yeah, happy Monday. I figure what the heck? You're like, we can wait. I'm like, why wait? Let's go. If we can get this started. Don't mind the dog barking in the background though. He has anxiety of some sort and he just hears things anymore. I don't know. He's, anyway.
I
So,
feel like your dog might be my spirit animal because
he's just like, what was that? What was that? Like every 5 minutes or so. But anyway, happy Monday. Welcome to the Thunderdome. Today is a big day. I'm either going to kind of go into the afternoon, or into the close of the markets today, feeling maybe a sense of relief that I avoided impending doom, or I might want to cry. So, good news is you can tune in live at noon Eastern today and hear what the USDA puts out and really hear if I do in fact cry. But we'll see. Going into it today, obviously, big thing today. The June report is just loaded with surprises. So that's one of the things, like I just tweeted, you really have to commend anyone that comes into this report with any sort of conviction, simply because it's survey driven for one. A lot of it can be affected by farmer sentiment. There's arguments over, total acreage. Like there's an argument right now that, acres could be higher simply because the principal acres were too low in March. Like there's just so many different back and forths that you could really kind of see or argue over or whatever coming into today that, anyone that is like, hey, I feel like this is going to happen and they're really confident about it. Like cool on them because I have no idea. Really, Carl and I were talking about over the weekend, like, remember in 12 when they came in and we had a stock surprise. And then remember in this time when it was negative surprise to price. And so, we'll go into it today with the idea that, corn acres, really the average trade estimate right now isn't expecting much in the way of a big change when you look at the number that Reuters put out or whatever. But when you look at, or listen to or read any sort of in-depth analysis, a lot of traders right now are kind of more of I wouldn't be surprised if it were over 96 million acres of corn. It's most everyone's kind of, this is the direction that I lean. And that soybean acres will actually be lower, even though, and that's the one thing that just kind of continues to blow my mind. Like I can understand trading negatively in corn with the idea that we're going to see an increase in acres, but we're still trading negatively, or have been in soybeans with the idea that we're going to see a decrease in acres. And we already are relatively tight using a record yield, when you look at the supply and demand outlook for new crop. But anyway, this acre number will be an update for the March number. It'll be solid. They'll use it in the July report. And then in August, we'll most likely get the FSA data that will be incorporated into the August report. So kind of one of those things where we'll get it, you'll barely get comfortable with it, and then you'll start to get the actual official Farm Service Agency, farmers go in and certify their acres and that gets reported in August, sort of deal. So really, when it comes down to it, the biggest thing we're going to be looking at is if there's a big miss in stocks. The old crop corn, cash market or the old crop bean market, really, like the spreads that you're watching and some of the basis activity that we've seen, has indicated that there could be more corn out there. There's been an argument, kind of like I said before, acres wise, everyone's a little leaning bearish in corn. The same could be said for the stocks number. Everyone's kind of leaning bearish coming into this because of the way that the spreads and basis is treated. Interesting, we had 0 deliveries overnight in corn. Some had expected we would see some of those deliveries, though we had seen the cash market strengthen here over the last day or so. So biggest thing we're going to be paying attention to is whether or not, we get an acreage surprise. If corn acres come in below 95 million, I think that would catch the market off guard. If bean acres come in below 83 million, that would also be a big deal. But then also I have to say, like, if quarterly stocks are much larger than expected, it would help to mute, a bullish acreage surprise and vice versa. So, good luck, flip a coin, Godspeed, like pray to your deity, ahead of time. And, we'll see kind of what that has to say. And like I said, you'll get to listen to me live at, noon Eastern time, kind of explain what the numbers say. And I may or may not cry. I've lost control of my emotions, the further I wade into my 40s. Right? I'll be fine. I'll just be really nervous. You'll get to hear me like sound out of breath. Like this whole idea of doing the live USDA report was genius. When it was like a low key, no big deal. Like, let's just have some fun.
You're like, oh,
yeah.
crap.
Now I'm going into it but anyway, next bullet point, big, beautiful tax bill. Looks like it'll pass. From what I'm seeing, the 45Z, it has stayed intact. That's still a part of the bill. There is a change in the Senate bill that would allow for the importation of feedstocks. I would see a reduced, credit, like 20% less on the credit there. So it would help to incentivize more in the way of the usage of US feedstocks and in biofuels, but not as much as the House bill, which was like no credits for imported feedstocks. We'll see if that changes. It looks like it will pass the Senate, or at least that's the conversation. Today's probably the day of like, give me this favor, give me that favor, whatever. And it does have to get past the House still. Trump is adamant July 4th is his deadline on that. And so, from an overall standpoint, like, does the tax bill have a huge influence on agriculture or anything overall? Potentially. It's 940 pages. So like, I can't say with conviction on that either. But it does bring this 45Z, this producer's tax credit. So one of the things that we've seen, obviously, is that we have this requirement of blend rates and some of these other things. And there's a cost associated with it of getting these new fuels. And so these tax credits help to incentivize that while the market is young, so to speak. And so this will be one of those things where they'll get a buck. It'll help to offset the cost, and you should see down the road, it won't impact the cost of the consumer, yada, yada, yada. So this just should help really reinforce. We got those RVOs. Now we're waiting for the SREs. Don't you love your acronyms? The small refinery exemption update will be kind of the final, like the trifecta. We've got the renewable volume obligation. Right? Do you like that? I'm going to use it again.
Well, only because I do love a gamble, but yeah.
Right? Yeah, I like it. But we will see kind of the trifecta. We get the RVO, that increased obligation that we received. If we got the 45Z, looks like it'll get put in place, at the very least clarified and implemented. And we also got rid of the land use, punishment. So that's one thing that is super, positive on that side. That looks like it'll pass. And now we just got to get something positive from the SRE, the small refinery exemption, at the very least. See a reallocation of the exemptions if they're given, or see some tossed out, whatever. I mean, that'll be one of the things that we'll be paying attention to, this week, is that for sure. Just kind of how that develops here. Lastly, trade negotiations to Canada and the US. Trump late on Friday said, I'm done. We're not negotiating anymore. To heck with you guys. To Canada. Everyone was kind of like, whoa. And I had a couple friends, they're like, is this a big deal? I said, by Sunday night, it'll be over. I think we're just getting used to that at this point. Like, at this point, I'm going to get more surprised and I shouldn't say this because I'm going to jinx it, but if something were to last an extended period of time now, I think that's the surprise more than I'm going to upset the apple cart for the weekend or whatever. But you did see, really what this was over is, Canada was implementing a digital services tax that would really kind of hit Meta, hit Alphabet, all of our little tech companies. And so they were implementing this tax, and it was kind of like this will not go anywhere. There's no way you can get rid of this sort of conversation at the end of last week. And so Trump's like, all right, well, sucks to your ass, Mar. I'll see you guys later. Lord of the Flies, just in case you're wondering. But anyway, he's like, I'll see you guys later. And, Canada last night was like, okay, about that digital tax thing, we don't care that much about it. So they paused it. They've introduced legislation to kind of do away with it on the idea that there's going to be a comprehensive trade deal announced between Canada and US by the 21st of July. So, we'll see. Daddy Trump's doing Daddy Trump things. And so, so I just have to use it now.
I got when you sent me the bullet points for the show for me to put up like the flyers and stuff, I was like, oh God, Daddy Trump, when's this coming back?
It's right. I don't know what you're going to say.
No.
But in this instance, it was just one of those deals. South Korea is asking for an extension, which we kind of thought, like they just had an election. They've had some, political problems going on or some things happening that have been taking their attention away from, negotiating. They'd asked for an extension to that. Who else? I was going back through, to see what else was in there, on who else was asking for an extension. Japan's back. Taiwan had a good second round. This, that, and the other thing. We did see Japan though say that they aren't going to sacrifice their auto industry. And Trump said, all right, cool, then buy more crude. So I'm like, what about ethanol? We can never buy ethanol and LNG and some of these other things. And kind of another bullet point I didn't put on there, but I think it's one that's, kind of super important to pay attention to is that Russia did launch their largest attack of the war last night, their largest aerial attack of the war. You might not have heard anything about it because that doesn't seem to be what we talk about anymore. They started hitting Western areas. And to me, that's the biggest thing. Like I've said this 1,000 times. One of the biggest reasons that the war between Russia and Ukraine did not cause, a huge increase in commodity food prices at the very least, and didn't disrupt the flow of grain out of Ukraine once they were established with the Black Sea Grain Initiative and some of these other, deals that we put together from the logistics standpoint was that life outside of, basically 1/3 of the country and, Kyiv and maybe some parts in Odessa and some of these other port cities or whatever. But for the most part in Western Ukraine, you were really able to kind of go along life as, usual or as usual as could be, when there's a war waging to your east. Now you're seeing Russia launch more in the way of like mental or, you know what I mean? Like mental warfare. They're hitting more in the West. They're doing certain things like that. And then you did see the Wall Street Journal report something that I've mentioned here more than once, is that Russia is amassing a massive amount of troops in the Sumy region. Like they're basically 12 miles from the Sumy capital right now with about 50,000 troops. And that's directly across where Kursk was. So they basically have pushed Ukraine's troops out of that. They're pushing into the Sumy region. And so you did see overnight, Trump or Lindsey Graham mentioned yesterday morning on the TV shows, Graham said that Trump has given him permission to bring that tariff bill, to a vote. And that would be a big thing. It's like 500% tariffs on people who buy Russian crude. There's a lot of things in there that could really, really hit them hard. The Kremlin this morning, kind of lashed out and said that would hurt peace talks. And considering Putin said like 10 days ago that all of Ukraine is meant to be theirs, I don't really know if they're trying to actively pursue peace talks or not. And so I feel like we've kind of ignored that situation. And as we move forward, I think that's something that we really need to pay attention to, especially seeing the European Union kind of struggle with some heat, likely seeing some second, year in a row corn production issues across a good part of that area. Ukraine has been the one that stepped in and really helped, bridge that gap or helped with their, imports, whether they wanted to or not. Like we could talk about war flows and blah, blah, blah. But, it'll be interesting to see just how Ukraine, pulls forward as we move ahead. So something there on the geopolitical front to pay attention to. We'll also get, export inspections. We'll get crop progress this afternoon, but the biggest focus of the day is going to be the USDA report. And so now I'm just going to go pick out the yellow Tums because they're my favorite. And I'll eat I'll
popping
make
them
sure.
like Skittles.
Right. That's I'm gonna get my Tums, and I'm gonna be prepared. About 3 hours and however many minutes away from now, not even 3 hours, 2 hours and 40 some minutes. But, yeah, we'll get that number out of the way, and we'll be able to focus on, new things, other anxiety things. But, yeah, tune in at noon Eastern and we'll let you know what the numbers have to say.
And I second that. If you're not tuning into Angie and Carl when the time comes, you need to go give your head a wobble because they will be the only place to find out exactly what all of the numbers mean. But Angie, thank you so much. For what a wonderful month we've had together. What a wonderful 6 months. What a wonderful year we've had together. But it's July tomorrow. So everyone, whatever you've been doing in June, it doesn't matter anymore. It's all about the next month and the next half of the year and the next quarter. But guys, whatever you're doing, stay safe, keep it tight, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.